There are lots of ways to make money. You can earn it, find it, counterfeit it, steal it. Or, if you're Satoshi Nakamoto, a preternaturally talented computer coder, you can invent it. That's what he did on the evening of January 3, 2009, when he pressed a button on his keyboard and created a new currency called Bitcoin. It was all bit and no coin. There was no paper, copper, or silver, just 31,000 lines of code and an announcement on the internet. Nakamoto, who claimed to be a 36-year-old Japanese man, said he had spent more than a year writing the software, driven in part by anger over the recent financial crisis. He wanted to create a currency that was impervious to unpredictable monetary policies, as well as to the predations of bankers and politicians. Nakamoto's invention was controlled entirely by software, which would release a total of 21 million bitcoins, almost all of them over the next 20 years. Every 10 minutes or so, coins would be distributed through a process that resembled a lottery. Miners, people seeking the coins, would play the lottery again and again. The fastest computer would win the most money. Interest in Nakamoto's invention built steadily. More and more people dedicated their computers to the lottery, and 44 exchanges popped up, allowing anyone with bitcoins to trade them for official currencies like dollars or euros. Creative computer engineers could mine for bitcoins. Anyone could buy them. At first, a single bitcoin was valued at less than a penny. But merchants gradually began to accept bitcoins, and at the end of 2010, their value began to appreciate rapidly. By June of 2011, a bitcoin was worth more than $29. Market gyrations followed, and by September the exchange rate had fallen to $5. Still, with more than 7 million bitcoins in circulation, Nakamoto had created $35 million of value. And yet Nakamoto himself was a cipher. Before the debut of Bitcoin, there was no record of any coder with that name. He used an email address and a website that were untraceable. In 2009 and 2010, he wrote hundreds of posts in flawless English, and though he invited other software developers to help him improve the code and corresponded with them, he never revealed a personal detail. Then, in April 2011, he sent a note to a developer saying that he had moved on to other things. He has not been heard from since. When Nakamoto disappeared, hundreds of people posted theories about his identity and whereabouts. Some wanted to know if he could be trusted. Might he have created the currency in order to hoard coins and cash out? We can effectively think of Satoshi Nakamoto as being on top of a Ponzi scheme, Giorgio, a blogger and technology commentator, wrote. It appeared, though, that Nakamoto was motivated by politics, not crime. He had introduced the currency just a few months after the collapse of the global banking sector, and published a 500-word essay about traditional fiat or government-backed currencies. The root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work, he wrote. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve. Banks, however, do much more than lend money to overzealous homebuyers. They also, for example, monitor payments so that no one can spend the same dollar twice. Cash is immune to this problem. You can't give two people the same bill. But with digital currency, there is the danger that someone can spend the same money any number of times. Nakamoto solved this problem using innovative cryptography. The Bitcoin software encrypts each transaction sender, and the receiver are identified only by a string of numbers, but a public record of every coin's movement is published across the entire network. Buyers and sellers remain anonymous, but everyone can see that a coin has moved from A to B, and Nakamoto's code can prevent A from spending the coin a second time. Nakamoto's software would allow people to send money directly to each other without an intermediary, and no outside party could create more bitcoins. Central banks and governments played no role. If Nakamoto ran the world, he would have just fired Ben Bernanke, closed the European Central Bank, and shut down Western Union. Everything is based on crypto proof instead of trust, Nakamoto wrote in his 2009 essay. Bitcoin, however, was doomed if the code was unreliable. Earlier this year, Dan Kaminsky, a leading internet security researcher, investigated the currency and was sure he would find major weaknesses. Kaminsky is famous among hackers for discovering, in 2008, a fundamental flaw in the internet which would have allowed a skilled coder to take over any website or even to shut down the internet. Kaminsky alerted the Department of Homeland Security and executives at Microsoft and Cisco to the problem and worked with them to patch it. "When I first looked at the code, I was sure I was going to be able to break it," Kaminsky said, noting that the programming style was dense and inscrutable. The way the whole thing was formatted was insane. Only the most paranoid, painstaking coder in the world could avoid making mistakes. Kaminsky quickly identified 9 ways to compromise the system and scoured Nakamoto's code for an insertion point for his first attack. But when he found the right spot, there was a message waiting for him. "Attack removed," it said. The same thing happened over and over, infuriating Kaminsky. "I came up with beautiful bugs," he said. "But every time I went after the code, there was a line that addressed the problem." He was like a burglar who was certain that he could break into a bank by digging a tunnel, drilling through a wall, or climbing down a vent, and on each attempt he discovered a freshly poured cement barrier with a sign telling him to go home. "I've never seen anything like it," Kaminsky said, still in awe. Kaminsky ticked off the skills Nakamoto would need to pull it off. "He's a world-class programmer with a deep understanding of the C++ programming language," he said. "He understands economics, cryptography, and peer-to-peer networking. Either there's a team of people who worked on this, or this guy is a genius." Kaminsky wasn't alone in this assessment. Soon after creating the currency, Nakamoto posted a 9-page technical paper describing how Bitcoin would function. That document included 3 references to the work of Stuart Haber, a researcher at HP Labs in Princeton. Haber is a director of the International Association for Cryptologic Research and knew all about Bitcoin. "Whoever did this had a deep understanding of cryptography," Haber said. "They've read the academic papers, they have a keen intelligence, and they're combining the concepts in a genuinely new way." Nakamoto had good reason to hide. People who experiment with currency tend to end up in trouble. In 1998, a Hawaiian resident named Bernard von Nothaus began fabricating silver and gold coins that he dubbed Liberty Dollars. 9 years later, the U.S. government charged Nothaus with conspiracy against the United States. He was found guilty and is awaiting sentencing. It is a violation of federal law for individuals to create private coin or currency systems to compete with the official coinage and currency of the United States, the FBI announced. Online currencies aren't exempt. In 2007, the federal government filed charges against eGold, a company that sold a digital currency redeemable for gold. The company's owners were found guilty of operating an unlicensed money-transmitting business, and the CEO was sentenced to months of house arrest. The company was effectively shut down. Nakamoto seemed to be doing the same things as these other currency developers who ran afoul of authorities. There is no company in control, no office to raid, and nobody to arrest. Today, Bitcoins can be used online to purchase beef jerky and socks made from alpaca wool. Some computer retailers accept them, and you can use them to buy falafel from a restaurant in Hell's Kitchen. In late August, I learned that Bitcoins could also get me a room at a Howard Johnson hotel in Fullerton, California, 10 minutes from Disneyland. I set up an account with Mt. Gox, the leading Bitcoin exchange, and transferred $120. A few days later, I bought 10.305 Bitcoins with the press of a button, and just as easily sent them to the Howard Johnson. It was a simple transaction that masked a complex calculus. Ever since Richard Nixon announced that U.S. dollars could no longer be redeemed for gold, the value of the dollar has been based on our faith in it. Bitcoin is similar. You have to trust that the system won't get hacked, and that Nakamoto won't suddenly emerge to somehow plunder it all. Nakamoto's extensive online postings have some distinctive characteristics. First of all, there is the flawless English. Over the course of 2 years, he dashed off about 80,000 words and made only a few typos. He covered topics ranging from the theories of the Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises to the history of commodity markets. Interestingly, when he created the first 50 bitcoins, now known as the Genesis block, he permanently embedded a brief line of text. The Times 03/Jan/2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This is a reference to a Times of London article that indicated that the British government had failed to stimulate the economy. Nakamoto appeared to be saying that it was time to try something new. He used British spelling, favor, color, gray, and at one point described something as being bloody hard. An apartment was a flat, math was maths, and his comments tended to appear after normal business hours ended in the United Kingdom. Michael Clear was a young graduate student in cryptography at Trinity College in Dublin. In 2008, Clear was named the top computer science undergraduate at Trinity. The next year, he was hired by Allied Irish Banks to improve its currency trading software, and he co-authored an academic paper on peer-to-peer technology. Clear was well-versed in economics, cryptography, and peer-to-peer networks. I emailed him, and we agreed to meet outside the lecture hall. Shortly after the appointed time, a long-haired, square-jawed young man in a beige sweater walked up to me. "I like to keep a low profile," he said. "I'm curious to know how you found me." Clear studied theoretical cryptography by himself in Dublin and had been programming computers since he was 10. He could code in a variety of languages, including C++, the language of Bitcoin. I asked, "Are you Satoshi?" He laughed but didn't respond. There was an awkward silence. "If you'd like, I'd be happy to review the design for you," he offered instead. "I could let you know what I think." In Glasgow, Kentucky, Kevin Gross, a 42-year-old Bitcoin miner, ran his operation at a garbage hauling facility. One wall was lined with 4-foot-tall homemade computers, with blinking green and red lights. Each system was a jumble of wires and hacked-together parts, with a fan from Walmart duct-taped to the top. Gross had built them 3 months earlier, for $4,000. Ever since, they had generated a steady flow of bitcoins, which Gross exchanged for dollars, averaging about 1,000 per month. Nakamoto knew that competition for bitcoins would eventually lead people to build these kinds of powerful computing clusters. Rather than let that effort go to waste, he designed software that uses the processing power of the lottery players to confirm and verify transactions. As people like Gross try to win bitcoins, their computers are harnessed to analyze transactions and ensure that no one spends money twice. In other words, Gross's backwoods operation functioned as a kind of bank. Clear sent me an email saying, "I also think I can identify Satoshi." He gave me the name Ville Leidenverda, a 31-year-old Finnish researcher. Leidenverda used to be a video game programmer and now studies virtual currencies. Leidenverda, however, pointed out that he has no background in cryptography. "You need to be a crypto expert to build something as sophisticated as Bitcoin," he said. "I'm definitely not one of them." Leidenverda admitted that part of what attracts people to Bitcoin is the mystery of Nakamoto's true identity. "Having a mythical background is an excellent marketing trick," he said. A few days later, I spoke with Michael Clear again. He responded that economics had never been a particular interest of his. "I'm not Satoshi," Clear said. "But even if I was, I wouldn't tell you. The point," Clear continued, "is that Nakamoto's identity shouldn't matter. The system was built so that we don't have to trust an individual, a company, or a government. Anybody can review the code, and the network isn't controlled by any one entity. That's what inspires confidence in the system." "You can't kill it," Clear said. Bitcoin would survive a nuclear attack. To Gross, Bitcoin was an inevitable evolution in money. "People use printed money less and less as it is," he said. "Consumers need something like Bitcoin to take its place. It's like 8 tracks going to cassettes to CDs and now MP3s, he said. Even though his relatives questioned his enthusiasm, Gross didn't hide his confidence, wearing a t-shirt that had the words "Bitcoin Millionaire" emblazoned in gold on the chest.